So remember that when Odysseus left Calypso and she freed him, Poseidon was angry and wrecked his ship. So he was washed ashore where he spent the night. So this next section is someone finds him and he begins to tell where he's been the last 20 years. I am Laertes' son. Odysseus is found by the daughter of Alcinous, king of the Phaeacians. That evening he is a guest at court. To the ancient people of Greece and Asia Minor, all guests are God-sent. They had to be treated with great courtesy before they could be asked to identify themselves and state their business. The reason why they did this is remember that the gods took on various forms. And so they treated every stranger as if they were a god in disguise because they didn't want to treat a god poorly in fear that they may be punished. That night at the banquet, the stranger who is washed up on the beach is seated in the guest place of honor. A minstrel or singer is called, and the mystery guest gives him a gift of pork, crisp with fat, and requests a song about Troy. In effect, Odysseus is asking for a song about himself. Odysseus weeps as the minstrel's song reminds him of all of his companions, who will never see their homes again. Now Odysseus is asked by the king to identify himself, and it is here that he begins the story of his journey. And you're going to notice that the point of view switches. It's now becomes first person, and Odysseus is telling the story using I. Now this was the reply Odysseus made. I am Laertes' son, Odysseus. Men hold me formidable for guile in peace and war. This fame has gone abroad to the sky's rim. So what he's saying is that everyone under the sky knows who he is because he's so brave and strong. My home is on the peaked seamark of Ithaca, under Mount Neon's wind-blown robe of leaves, in the sight of other islands, Dulichion, Same, wooded Zakynthos, Ithaca, being most lofty in that coastal sea, and northwest, while the rest lie east and south. A rocky isle, but good for a boy's training. I shall not see on earth a place more dear, though I have been detained long by Calypso, loveliest among goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to be her heart's delight. As Circe of Aea, the enchantress, desired me and detained me in her hall. But here in my heart I never gave consent. Where shall a man find sweetness to surpass his own home and his parents? In far lands he shall not, though he find a house of gold. So what Odysseus is saying is that even though he's been gone and has been seduced by Calypso and Circe, he's always had his home in his heart. And he's saying that even if you gave him a palace of gold, it could never replace his home. So now he's going to flash back to where he's been the last 10 years. And he's going to begin to retell the story. What of my sailing then from Troy? What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? The wind that carried west from Ilion brought me to Ismaros, on the far shore, a strong point on the coast of the Cicones. So that when he left Troy, he came to the island of the Cicones. This was his first stop after leaving Troy. I stormed that place and killed the men who fought. Plunder we took, and we enslaved the women to make division, equal shares to all. But on the spot, I told them, back and quickly out to sea again. So basically, when they docked their ships, they fought the men that were there, and then they stole everything. And then Odysseus said, come on, let's go. But my men were mutinous, meaning they didn't obey. They did what they wanted. Fools on stores of wine, they were drunk. Sheep after sheep they butchered by the surf, and shambling cattle feasting, while fugitives went inland, running to call arms the main force of Cicones. This was an army trained to fight on horseback, or where the ground required on foot. They came with dawn over the terrain like the leaves in blades of spring. So doom appeared to us, dark word of Zeus for us, our evil days. My men stood up and made a fight of it. So his men were fighting the Cicones, the other men, backed on the ships with lances kept in play from bright morning through the blaze of noon, holding our beach, although so far outnumbered. So Odysseus and his men fought from morning until afternoon, but they were really outnumbered. But when the sun passed toward unyoking time, when the sun was setting, then the Achaeans, one by one, gave way. 6 benches were left empty in every ship that evening when we pulled away from death. So 6 benches of men basically died in that fight with the Cicones. And this new grief we bore with us to sea. Our precious lives we had, but not our friends. No ship made sail next day until some shipmate had raised a cry 3 times for each poor ghost, unfleshed by the Cicones on that field. And that was their way of honoring the dead, and the ancient Greeks would call out the name of their dead 3 times to honor them. Now Zeus, the lord of cloud, roused in the north a storm against the ships, and driving veils of squall moved down like night on land and sea. The bows went plunging at the gusts, sails cracked and lashed out strips in the big wind. We saw death in that fury, dropped the yards, unshipped the oars, and pulled to the nearest lee. So they had to pull their ships over because there was a terrible storm on the sea. Then 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief, until a 3rd dawn came with ringlets shining. And ringlets are what little girls' curls. And so this would be personification here because the sun doesn't have hair to have little ringlets. Then we put up our masts, hauled sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it safely home that time, but as I came round Malea, the current took me out to sea, and from the north a fresh gale drove me past Cythera. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea before dangerous high winds.